Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking some time this afternoon to hear us talk. My name is Tyler Bauer. I'm also joined by Gal Rabinowitz. We're going to be talking today about hosting our hosting program for Cloud at Work and the partner program and the benefits of that. We're going to get into some detail into why Cloud at Work is an excellent organization to work with from a partner standpoint and how we're really making an impact in the Sage community. So as I mentioned, my name is Tyler Bauer. I'm the Director of Cloud and Hosting Services for Cloud at Work. My job is really two main things. The first piece is to focus on emerging tech and making sure our products are in the upper right-hand corner and always current and ahead of the curve. And then the second part is working with our partners and customers and helping them identify evaluation process and risk assessment for their customers and themselves as they transition to the cloud and really help educate the market on the best practices of doing so. I'm also joined by Agal Rabinowitz, so I'll let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Tyler. Hi, everyone. My name is Igor Rabinovich. I'm the Director of Partner Success. My job, my role here is to work with partners to help them with any tools that they need in terms of growing their business with hosting. So we work on partner strategy, short-term, long-term strategy, and the best way to market and communicate these services to their customers, and then to grow the top of funnel and the recurring revenue for you. Tyler, thanks.
Sure. So just some housekeeping items. The presentation probably would be about 30 minutes. I don't see it stretching past that. We're going to talk, high level on some topics and some slides, and then I'm also going to show you a tool that we use that really helps differentiate us. After that's all done, uh, just please, as we go along, if you have any questions, just type in those questions into the chat box at the bottom, and I promise we will address every question after the presentation is done. It's actually my favorite part about doing these. I love interacting, so please, no question is a bad question. Don't be shy. So let's get our brains working. This fine evening or afternoon. Um, Everybody knows what today's world looks like, right? They feel it in their own way, either from a business standpoint or from a personal standpoint. If you're like myself, I'll give you the warning now. If you hear some children yelling and screaming in the background, this is the new normal that we're faced with. Um, but from a business standpoint, even from a personal standpoint, we're starting to see the cloud really adapt itself into that new normal. Things like Zoom meetings. I can't tell you how many times we've had excuse me, meetings with friends and maybe a few beverages over those meetings, and just that's the way that we're communicating now. From a business standpoint, companies have really seen a dramatic shift on the way customers as well as employees interact with their business. Mainly business for the most part was built on a local network where people would come into the office and leave, where now everything has been turned on its head. So your customers really are starting to see that maybe they weren't prepared for essentially turning their central office into a data center. And really, what the cloud is providing is a very streamlined, efficient way to get to a point of success and a point of acceptance of risk. It's already turnkey built. And possibly could be a better solution for your customer other than investing in its own tech and managing that tech in traditional senses of on-premise. Um, the cloud has been around for quite some time, and not necessarily saying that the cloud is right for everyone, but I feel like the cloud over the past 3 to 4 years has really been incorporated into all of our lives. So I don't think the question for ourselves nor our customers is what is the cloud any longer, more so how can we use the cloud in the best way. um, that being said, you know we're here to talk about Sage, right? We all deal with Sage applications in one way, shape, or form, and uh, we've seen the transition over the past with CRM and HR related applications really taking the stronghold as far as adoption to the cloud. The main reason for that is a lot of these applications were born in the quote unquote cloud era, right? So they were started with cloud first mentality. The challenging piece with ERP technology and manufacturing and distribution and high-end financial applications is that a lot of them have been around for quite some time. And on top of that, if you look at Sage, what I feel makes Sage so unique and such a differentiator in the marketplace is its unbelievable community of channel partners and ISVs that really enhance the customer experience and really are able to tailor fit a solution to what a customer needs instead of fitting that customer within a box. That same methodology makes it extremely difficult to develop these types of platforms for cloud-based consumption. So, things like, Sage, for instance, Sage 100, 300, even X3, these applications would need to be essentially reformatted, rewritten, and as well, all of the different ISVs that go around it. So there are SaaS options that Sage deploys that really, fit the chocolate and vanilla customer, and those are definitely great options. And we're actually working directly with Sage to hopefully help enhance those offerings in the future. It's what's good for us is good for the customer, right? So, but Cloud at Work exists to basically be that cloud provider, that cloud instance for customers who have those different ISVs, who have those customizations, who have those high-end security needs or high-end connectivity needs. So Cloud at Work exists, and those types of providers like Cloud at Work are really what's going to be showing the upswing in ERP adoption to the cloud, because customers are starting to realize that they don't have to sacrifice the way they do business, and they're able to keep up with the changing pace of technology without having to invest constantly and reevaluate and pay maintenance and all those different things. So really the as a service model is starting to take hold in the ERP space. Just some quick summaries just to kind of prove that. On premise 3 years ago, 37% of customers were really consuming most of their applications and workloads on premise. Fast forward to 2020, this is pre-COVID. That's a 10-point swing. That's a significant change. A large portion, and you can go down and look at those stats, but a large portion of why this is happening is because the technology ecosystem is changing so fast. If I think back just 3 years ago, what technology was like then versus now, we take for granted that pace, right? We take for granted some of the things that we're consuming and at the rate that we're consuming them. And as well with new younger generations coming into the workforce and the need it now approach to data and technology, as well as the cybersecurity hot button really pushing and propping up some of these things. Customers as well as service providers are really realizing that, look, this isn't easy as we thought. This isn't the same environment. This isn't the same world that we lived in 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So it's really important that we're not sacrificing any or assuming any more risk as a business or as a service provider. So we're not assuming that risk, but what are the paths to success at that point? How do we get to a level of success and acceptance? And when you start to think about that, you really try and figure out, does it make sense for me to do it myself and try and wrangle all of these different layers and pieces together, or do I go take a slice of what someone's already built? And what the market's proving out is that slice approach, that as a service approach, is really the method that people are choosing. Big reason I hit on is cybersecurity, right? So, back 13 years ago in 2007, I'm sure all of you were like me in understanding what cybersecurity was and cyber threats, and seeing the likes of different government entities or different large corporations like Target become breached, and credit card information be leaked, or identity theft. Those types of things were just popping up at that point. Those weren't prevalent, and really at that point in time, a lot of folks were thinking, this can't happen to me. I don't have any type of data that anybody would want. Fast forward, another 6 7 years, right into 2013 14, I think we all started to realize, like, wow, it's not the data that they want. They just want to put us out of business so we can pay money to get back into business. And so we started to realize that they're not fishing with just a line and a lure anymore. They're fishing with nets. and they're trying to find people who are in vulnerable positions who have cut corners and not taking the right steps as far as data protection and architecture. And what we found is that, you know, that method worked, right? A lot of people who, were assuming things were getting done just weren't happening. And even customers today, believe it or not, I talk to them, and backups you would think are a thing of the past. Like, it's just assumed that that's happening. But believe it or not, a lot aren't doing them the correct way or aren't checking them and making sure data is valid. The other piece to think about too is when you take the organization that's traditionally connecting in via LAN or a local area network, and you now flip it on its head. Slowly, that company over time was maybe more accepting to, like, maybe one or two or three people connecting in remote, maybe executives who needed to get a report out, or somebody in a managerial strategic position who needed to work from home. But they limited that. And the reason for that is because of putting all of the pressure on the central data center, which is in their office in a closet, right? For the most part. I know that's a big assumption. But when you do that, you're really putting a huge burden, the more and more remote connectivity outside in, onto that central hub. And as well, the methods of which you're doing it may not be the best for performance and latency. And two, you're opening up, possibly based on the way you're connecting, a lot of risk from letting outside threats in through opening up all of these different unsecured endpoints, or not using technology where the endpoints don't matter. And so those are the types of things of what's going to drive this number to continue to go up, especially post COVID, because more and more people are going to work from home. And if companies aren't recognizing that their local data center, the way that they've done things for the past 10 years, doesn't need a fresh look at it or a new set of eyes on it, and change the way they're evaluating technology, there's going to be big problems coming down. And I see this number doing nothing but going up. And you've seen that, right? I can think of, I mean, if you just Google cybersecurity threats or ransomware attacks, tons of different information will pop up. I can think of one really recently that happened to a very, very large organization in Citrix, where NetScaler devices actually became compromised, and companies' SSL certificates and different types of sensitive information were leaked out onto the dark web in massive amounts and massive droves of information. And that information is still exists. It just hasn't been used yet. So, you know, those are some things that are happening. Recently, we had Windows, Microsoft operating system 2008 R2 kind of receive end of life, stop patches, stop support. Believe it or not, there's a ton of people even on 2003, let alone 2008. So those are starting to become weak points and vulnerabilities that people need to think about. So all of these things are just at a rapid pace being mishmashed together, and really just compounding at such a rate where it becomes very difficult to manage that piece on your own. So enough of the doom and gloom. But I think it's really important that we talk about what is happening, and the truth about what's happening in the market. But let's pretend that our customers are looking for cloud solutions, and now we need to figure out what type of cloud solution is best fit for our customers. I live by this statement by saying, look, cloud providers are not created equal, nor are its customers. What that means to me is that there is no such thing as a bad cloud provider. There's no such thing as a bad cloud product. There's no such thing as a bad customer. There's no such thing as bad expectations, right? We have to set the expectation, define success together. That way we can look at cloud providers, look at the SLAs, look at the value-based piece of the experience that I'm consuming. And that's going to help me identify what is acceptable bars and what isn't. If things like disaster recovery and availability aren't important, you're going to spend less into that cloud solution than you would if you have very strict data policies, or you have very strict replication policies. The more risk that you're willing to take on as a customer, the less money you're going to spend in the marketplace. the more risk that you want to push away from your business, the more money you're going to spend. So it's a very simple kind of yin and yang, supply and demand type conversation. But if we have salespeople or we have organizations that are really good at marketing or really good at selling, sometimes that becomes really challenging. Or even worse, if we don't know how to ask the right questions, such as architecture based questions, availability based questions. How are you storing data? What types of redundancy policies do you have? These are all things that we need to work with our customers on to help them understand what cloud solution is right for them, so we're optimizing their spend and optimizing their dollar. We want to do this so you're not overpaying for services that you don't need. We want to do it so you don't have downtime, and we want to make sure that data is protected. We're at Cloud at Work. We're not a company who's cutting corners. We do things the right way. We may not be the cheapest in the world, but we're doing things the right way, and we are getting noticed for that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The way that cloud companies define themselves, or kind of their line in the sand as far as what type of organization they are, is based on nines. Some companies you'll see out there will say we're 99.9% available. I've even seen some cloud companies say, look, we're 100% available. This is a complete ambiguous number that is made up by cloud company to essentially say, okay, this is what we're defining as success for our business. If we don't meet this, we're out of compliance, and we'll give you a credit, or we'll let you out of your contract. This is the benchmark for defining success. So, for instance, companies who say 99.9, that sounds like a lot, but when you actually extrapolate that out, that's over a day's worth of downtime per year. Some customers, that's completely unacceptable. I know a couple companies out there who have 99%, which is just above 3.5 days. Cloud at Work is 4 nines, so 99.99%, which is sub an hour a year. We actually trend more towards the 6 nines at the bottom. I see companies again who guarantee 100% SLA. That It's just irresponsible to do that. Again, that's like a sales and marketing tactic. If you see a cloud company guaranteeing you 100% uptime, it's really their way of saying, look, we're just going to credit you to death. We're going to give you credits every time there's a blip. So if that's the type of experience that you want, that's okay. But it's not a responsible response in technology today. So let's talk about Cloud at Work and how we built it, and why it's different. So first and foremost, Cloud at Work is part of Net at Work. So Net at Work has a ton of Sage experience. And we're going to get into why partners work with us in a minute. But having that Sage and ISV expertise in-house really, really helps as far as bridging the gap from infrastructure through application. In no way, shape, or form are we looking to do application services for our partners' customers. But it's extremely important that your cloud provider understands what applications look like, how to provision them, and have logic behind their architecture for it. When we started Cloud at Work 2.5 years ago, we really wanted to optimize and build an enterprise level cloud technology from the ground up for Sage. So we started with 2 bi-coastal data centers. So 2 tier 4 centers, one in Philadelphia, one in Dallas, Texas. We built everything with high availability in mind. So looking at things like, for every one thing there's another, or N+1 philosophy. For our data policies and redundancy policies, we want to have we have hourly and daily backups that are stored on separate networks, no matter what product your customers are consuming. It's very important from a ransomware standpoint. We'll talk about that in a minute. Everything that we've done from a product and customer experience and architecture standpoint is built to optimize the performance of Sage environments. So things like when customers need to do upgrades, we actually give them environments to do those upgrades on at no additional cost. Things like spinning up new servers or new resources, and proactive monitoring. We're looking at benchmarks and thresholds of how your customers are using the applications based on seasonality, based on certain days of the week. We're looking at all of that logic and data and making new recommendations proactively back to customers if there needs to be an increase in resources for optimal performance. And as well, as I mentioned, everything that we do from the top down is Sage. We're 100% laser focused on creating the best experience for Sage users and Sage partners in the cloud. So let's get into our products just a little bit. So when we started Cloud at Work, we came to market by saying, look, we want the best enterprise level cloud solution with Sage expertise on the market, hands down. So everything that we do from a virtual private standpoint is built with isolation, redundancy, and security in mind. We guarantee 99.99% uptime, which is again sub 1 hour per year. You're in those tier 4 data centers. You have 24 by 7 by 365 monitoring and support. And everything is built custom and specific to your customer's needs. So we're not going to have red tape and a whole bunch of barriers between what can and can't go into the cloud. We're able to architect, because everything is virtual private and dedicated to spec for the client, so they don't have to change their business process. We conform the cloud to them. Pricing is very easy to understand, and it's per resource pricing, so we're extremely transparent. There's no application limitations. There's no boundaries like we talked about. We have a very strict data policy, so every customer, no matter what, whether you pay us $100 a month or $100,000 a month, we have hourly snapshots of 48 hours stored on a separate network. We have daily backups stored for 30 days on a separate data center. And we do that specifically so that way every customer in our data center has production data, snapshot data on a separate network, and backup data in a separate data center. What that does is it says if a customer maybe clicks on a link or someone downloads something that they shouldn't and it impacts your environment, you let a threat in. First of all, that's completely isolated to only their environment. It's not going to impact other customers in our data center. But very quickly, we're able to spin back to an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours before that threat entered the environment. And we're able to do that very quickly for you. So those are the types of reasons why we have data in different locations. Recent outages, if you're familiar with the Sage hosting world, not to name names, but there's been about 3 or 4 cloud companies out there who have recently had major ransomware attacks at their data center that not only impacted one customer, but entire droves of customers within their data center. The reason for that is architecture, not having isolation between customers, having shared threads, and then as well, not having usable backups on separate networks. Their backup data was on the same network as production. So when ransomware comes in, it encrypts everything that's on that same network. So we take the steps to not put customers or our partners in vulnerable positions. As well, you have the options to fold in disaster recovery, where we have an industry-leading 4-hour RTO recovery time objective and a 1-hour RPO or recovery point objective. And it's integrating that cloud and that Sage customer experience with you, the partner, in between that. So we're able to tie into the way that you prefer to support your customer, that you prefer to work with your customer, and we'll fit like a puzzle piece within that solution of how you guide us. Slowly, we started to realize that our virtual private offering, while it is truly the best of breed in the Sage Cloud world, and really could stand on its own against any cloud provider in the world, we slowly realized that there was a lot of companies who were using things like Sage 100 and 300 who had less than 5 users, and those folks were consuming some of these other multi-tenant or shared providers at a very high clip rate, strictly because the pricing was lower, right? And some customers, as we know, buy on price. So we thought, look, this isn't the business that we wanted to get in. This isn't the product that we want to really define us. But at the same point in time, we're seeing droves of customers consuming this, and we're seeing droves of customers being impacted by these ransomware threats and these outages. So let's build it better. Let's build this hybrid environment, but let's build it better, the right way. So that's what we've done. We've taken a hybrid approach to sharing certain pieces on the back end for our customers. Things like virtual firewalls, but isolating within the firewall. Things like RDS web functions, but isolating within that function itself. And then dedicating application servers and database servers for each of our customers, so that way data is in its own isolated bubble, its own isolated environment. We're going to include everything from SQL license to Excel license to any other licensing that they're going to need to run that environment. And it's going to be anywhere from $85 per user to $120 per user per month. And again, that's going to be for anybody under 5 users. So we have that option for customers. But as well, notice we're not sacrificing any of our data policies, right? It was very important for me when we built this that that every customer still had 48 hours of snapshots and still had 30 days of backups, all on separate networks. Extremely important for me. The next, I mentioned backup before, and I couldn't believe the amount of customers that we talked to who were looking for a backup option. But we we saw a hole in the market as well around Sage specific backup and doing that very inexpensively for our customers. So we created an offsite backup solution that retains 14 days of Sage data. It's very simple, easy, and very efficient. We do all that for $50 a month, and that's going to give your customers up to 100 gig of storage for their Sage related data, and we're able to really deliver that service in a very easy, streamlined way for your customers. So just another way that we're trying to accommodate the market there. So in summary, why partner with Net at Work? Or I'm sorry, why partner with Cloud at Work? It really boils down to three main reasons. The first is we know Sage applications. Now, I talk to a lot of partners, and maybe even some of you are thinking, well, this is exactly why I wouldn't partner with Cloud at Work or Net at Work, because they know the applications and they're viewed as a competitor. I can assure you that through our Alliance program, and Agal's going to talk about this in a minute, but through our Alliance program, we make it contractual. We're not in the business of trying to take anybody's customers. We're not in the business of trying to step on anybody's toes. We want to help build your brand and help prop you up in order to do more efficiently. What some people view as a negative, I actually view as the reason why partners work with us. If you're working with a cloud company who does not know Sage applications, one, you're going to have a large learning curve around provisioning and optimal performance. Two, you're going to have a large learning curve around integrating support methodologies and making sure that the finger pointing doesn't happen between them and that the burden isn't going back onto your customer. So by us knowing those Sage applications and being able to understand whether it is truly an application or a cloud problem, it's going to help you solve problems faster for your customers, and it's going to make your customers happier because they're consuming a seamless environment where burden and problems aren't being placed on their lap. The second is that we use enterprise cloud technology. So if you agree with me that having a cloud organization understand Sage applications is a benefit. From there, when you look at all the other Sage companies who do cloud resources, there's nobody in the marketplace taking it to the level of enterprise cloud technology like Cloud at Work. And I can dive into our architecture and show you all of those pieces, but we're not cutting corners. We're doing things the right way, and we're doing things like doing our own SOC audits. We have multiple cybersecurity redundancy policies that we have available. We have a ton of data, and we take the right steps to do it right the first time. So that way we're building long relationships with partners and building long relationships with your customers. And third is we pay the most. We have the highest margins in the industry. I've been doing cloud for close to 12 years, and we pay minimum to partners 20% of revenue. So starting out with us, as long as you meet certain minimums, you're going to get 20%, and you're going to continue to get 20%. And let me tell you, those minimums are very small. It's basically saying, let's talk every year and bring in a couple customers every year, right? And you'll get that 20% in perpetuity. So you can really build a nice business, and you have a partner who's going to get your back in doing that and helping you do that. Now, Gall's going to talk a little bit about our enablement process and what makes our partner program from a nuts and bolts perspective so successful for partners. Gall, let me give control here.
Hey, Tyler, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get to our slides. And I guess it would be helpful just to give you a little bit of background on the program and Alliance program, what it looks like, kind of what it means here. So we've had this Alliance program for the better part of probably 7, almost 8 years now. We've got about 200 Alliance partners in the program, and the partners span different types of partners. The majority of them are Sage partners, but then there's other partner types like managed service providers and so on as well. My role here in this program is to work closely with our partners and to take what we've learned by working with other partners as well as with about 7,000 that are work customers, and then to really take all that knowledge and share it with our partners to help them drive their business. So one of the benefits that Tyler alluded to earlier is that we know a lot about Sage, not just because we learned it yesterday, but because we do have the history of 7,000 or so customers over since 1998, right, from our sister company Net at Work, and we take that education and what's working there, not just from a technology point of view, but from a marketing point of view. How do we grow that revenue and so on, and we then share that with our partners. So everything you're seeing here, everything that you're about to see in terms of this Quick Start initiative, is really all about taking best of breed and practices that have been proven and marketing campaigns and things that have worked really well, and then really putting that into a box and sharing it with partners. So when we think about the Quick Start initiative, let's see if I can advance this. I'll just talk a little bit about what are the objectives of this initiative as we work with partners. So we're trying to make it very transactional based from a point of view of measurements, right? How do we measure success working with our partners? And our objective with this initiative when we work with partners is to add $40,000 in annual recurring revenue in the first 12 months to your business. And that goes up to $80,000 of annual recurring revenue in the first 24 months. Now, good question is of how do we do that? We'll go into that in a sec. Sorry, I'm just having trouble advancing. There we go. One important point to make on that is that 40,000 going up to 80,000, that's all profit. So there is no cost to join the program. There's no cost for you to participate in the program. You don't have to hire additional sales staff. You don't have to train additional sales staff. We take care of all of that. We'll provide you with all the information you need. We'll educate your staff. We'll walk through that in a second. But the point to make here is that 40 and 80,000 is just profit you're adding every year to your bottom line. Now, these numbers are based on helping on us working with you to help you close 10 hosting deals per year in your customer base. Depending on the size of company that you are, that may seem high, that may seem low. We based it on an average partner with about 100 customers. Now, of course, if you've got 50 customers, this looks slightly different. If you have 200 customers, it'll look different as well. But these are real numbers based on historical averages that we've seen both with our own customers as well as with partner customers. And this doesn't make a difference whether it's Sage 100, 300, X3, CRM, fixed assets. All that can be hosted, and all of that is represented in the numbers. Just to kind of give you a sense, so for example, this month, Cloud at Work will close probably about 20 deals. That's kind of the projection right now. So just to give you a sense, right, we're going to close 20 deals this one month. We're talking about closing 10 deals over the entire course of a year with a partner. Very doable, not very difficult to achieve at all. And everything that we're built here in this Quick Start program is targeted to start generating new revenue for partners as early as 45 days. And as a matter of fact, just recently this is proven out again. We started this with a new partner recently, educated their team, ran a webinar, leads started coming in, first deal's about to close, and it's right within that 45-day window. So this has proven itself over and over and over again. So when we think about this Quick Start initiative, it's really hosting practice in a box, right? It's us coming to a partner and saying, here's everything you need to start this hosting practice. Now, some of you may think of this as, I want to start a new hosting practice to add to what I do. Some of you maybe think about it in terms of more just transactional. I have these two customers who I think need hosting. I'm not sure if I want to make a practice out of it. Either one works, right? But what we've built here is the ability to help you build that practice if you would like to do that. Again, of course, we're always happy to work with you on individual transactions as they come up. So what are we providing you in this kind of practice, a hosting practice in a box? So first, you get education for all your sales and account management teams, right? Some teams may be smaller, some larger, but doesn't make a difference. We'll educate all of them on, what are we talking about, how to talk about it with your customers, what to listen for, how to have the conversation. We provide you with all the marketing assets and collateral that you need. We'll work with you on live joint webinars for your customers if you feel that's appropriate. We'll help you with customer profiling and opportunity mapping. So just some tools that we have to help quickly identify low-hanging fruit, who are the right kind of customers for these conversations, and then how to quickly transition them to next steps. Again, we provide you campaigns in a box to uncover leads, so we can give you everything that you need to start having this conversation with your customers, right away. And then we could either work with your marketing team to develop campaigns. We can send it out on your behalf, whatever's comfortable for you. Our team will then provide your sales support to close the deals. So again, your role is to manage and maintain the relationship with your customers. We will come in as the hosting experts, and we will support you in that conversation with your customers to help you close those deals and start to get your customers moving. And then, of course, at the end of it all, CloudWork provides the expert services to make sure that the customers are happy, that they're getting the right level of service, and that that they're just generally satisfied and willing to give referrals and so on. So this is our quick start program. This is kind of the hosting in a box. And to get started, it's really just a matter of, let's jump on a short call. Let's have a quick conversation. We'll talk to you a little bit more about the program, how it works, the steps, what's required. Shouldn't be more than about 30 minutes. Come in, join our community, and let's get started working together right away. All right, so at this point, let's jump into Q&A. So if you do have a question, please enter it into the question box, and we'll be happy to address them now, and I will read them out as they come in. So far, the couple questions that are kind of similar, so I'll kind of classify them into one. So the question is tools. So if the partner needs a quote, what is the process? Is there some sort of online quoting tool available? Is there some way to do it? And actually, I'm glad you asked that question, because I think that's a great example that demonstrates our knowledge of Sage, and how to host Sage, and how far we've taken that. Tyler, are you able to share that tool a little bit?
Yeah, I completely forgot about that piece too. I apologize. Let me pull that up. So something else to just hit on really quickly. Everybody can see my screen, right, Akal?
Yep.
Okay. Something just to hit on really quickly. This is actually the tool that we use directly with Sage Sage X3. So we work exclusively with Sage X3 and their team as their cloud provider for any type of single tenant solution that needs ISVs or third parties. Now, this is a huge differentiator, and we have these tools that we're developing for all the different products. But this tool is what really sets us apart. This tool allows us to really understand the customer and build environments that are specifically architected for your customer. We're not just looking at this as every customer is chocolate and vanilla. So let's just go through it real quick, and I'll show you a little bit about the logic. So we provide customers with this tool in order to provide budgets for their customers, and let's get the conversation started so we can have more detailed, more pointed conversations. So if we're looking at this from an X3 perspective, let's just type in a user count here of let's say 15. So we'll answer these questions, and this is going to help us just put human logic into the equation. And then from here, we're going to let's just start answering some of these volume questions. So for X3, if you're a partner of X3, this is really important because that users aren't necessarily the driver for what infrastructure is required, but it's mainly around um, the components of volume. So let's start to look at this, and we'll make this 65 so we have a little bit more room to work with here. And we'll start to type in some of these volume pieces, and you'll see it starts to calculate up. If this volume component is actually uh, green, that means that the volumes fall within the threshold. But if you'll see, if I type in 15 users here, we've made an estimate that we're going to need about $1,300 a month in resources. But you'll see that it actually calculates the delta of what we'll actually need based on volumes. If you come over here, you'll start to see that. So you'll see the servers begin to get architected based on our inputs, and you'll see that, okay, looks like we need some additional resources because the volumes are a little bit above what we need, right? Next, let's go into and start selecting modules. So we'll select that, yeah, we're a distributor and a manufacturer. We're going to need the configurator. We're going to need ADC, and they're going to use SEI. And SEI is going to have 5 users. Then we're going to look at some of our ISVs. So we're going to use Avalara. Yeah, we're going to use True Commerce. We're going to do 100 transactions, and we're going to look at, let's look at True Sky, and let's look at Process Weaver. And we'll say we do, I don't know, 100 shipments a day. So when you start to look at all of these pieces, we added a lot of complexity, right? And most cloud companies aren't asking these questions, and you have to, you as a partner are really having to have to provide a recommendation back to your cloud provider, probably, as far as what is needed. And a lot of times that's a guess. This piece right here is based on actual customer data in our data center, and as well it's based on our experiences in doing this for day in, day out of about 3 years. So you'll see you'll have servers that are automatically added here, and this is going to be based off of our recommendation. Now this tool is initially based just to create a budget, so we get an understanding of what we're starting with, and then we start to look at the volumes in more detail to maybe figure out if I can take this SCI server and maybe put it on the SQL server, or if maybe I don't need these additional resources and I can get it out. But this at least gives me a rundown of what exactly I'm consuming. Now in this case, it was $4,000 a month roughly, but after making a few human logic tweaks, we could probably get this down if we needed to as low as 3,000 or maybe 2,000, right? We just have, this just gives us a baseline, a good starting point to have a conversation. And this is the way that we think, right? And what really sets us apart from that standpoint. So I hope that answered your question. Sorry.
Thank you, Tyler. No, I think you did a great job answering that question. Again, just to kind of highlight a little bit what, why this is so important. And this is one, when we show this tool to partners, I think it really opens their eyes. X3 is obviously the most complicated product that we'd have to support from a hosting point of view. And we're able to tell partners and customers exactly how they need to change their environment based on, volume, modules, ISVs, whatever, right? So that's a very unique thing to be able to do in the industry, and I believe demonstrates the extent to which we know the environments and know the products. Not as complicated for Sage 100 or Sage 300. We have the same abilities there as well, but clearly if we could do X3, we could do the others as well. Those are really the only questions we had. So at this point, I think we want to thank everyone. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions, please reach out to Tyler or myself, and we will send this webinar to everyone. Tyler?
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy. Hopefully we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.